So, okay, let's start talking about Team Liquid, because here's the thing that's going to make this podcast already interesting. Mark the time. This might be where it goes apeshit. Cards on the table. I already know from doing all the watch parties, Kira is sort of low-key in my camp. I don't even know why I say low-key. It's high-key in my camp, where we are essentially the heretics of the Church of Bjergsen. We think it was really good years ago, but we also think at times Jensen was better. Spoiler, we also watch international competition. Are you guys all fucking eternal sunshine of the spotless mind to yourself every time you're a TSM fan every fucking Worlds? I was watching those tournaments. So what I want to know actually, Yaska, is where are you on this one? Like, obviously now we're going to talk about, like, you sort of hinted at it there. You actually implied, like, maybe Bjergsen isn't the star player of Team Liquid. Maybe he isn't even that good. So where is the cards on the table? Where have you been at over Bjergsen's career, and where are you at on him now?
So I first off, I would say that Bjergsen is probably the worst roster move, replacing him with Jensen, probably in all major regions combined. And that can be true even if they make it to finals of an MSI or a top 4 at an MSI. If they make it to a quarters at Worlds and they win both splits. All of that can be true, and Bjergsen can still be really bad.
Okay.
Because so many other pieces in Team Liquid could potentially carry him. And even though I think that Bjergsen is not a good player right now, in the slightest, his sort of very passive style can fit well into getting carried by the rest of the team.
Where do you give us some thoughts as well? Like before he became the coach at TSM, how did you evaluate him as a player? And as you're saying here, it's mainly like at the moment he's not in good form, right?
Yeah, definitely more now. He's not in good form. I don't think that he's the Bjergsen of the past. I don't think that the Bjergsen of the past was this super amazing carry that would even contend with like being top 20 mids worlds. Top 20 mids in the world ever. I don't think he's ever really been at that point. He has a very good style for playing in NA and abusing the weaknesses of NA. But every time he's gone to an international competition, whenever he has people who are actually contesting him, he just falls under the pressure. And he's not somebody who really can succeed outside of the NA system. He's molded to be the most optimal person if you want to win an LCS championship, and one of the worst if you want to do anything at work.
Okay. Where are you at on this, Kira?
Well, the Bjergsen thing alone, I think it's garbage, man. I don't know what this guy does well, apart from like the full thing of like he plays Zillion. It's like I'm just not getting it. I know it's Bjergsen. Like in the past, I think he's a great player. I think he's one of the best NA players ever. I've got a lot of respect for, you know what I mean, he's drag teams, he's carried teams and all that. But in this Team Liquid's like setting, in this Team Liquid lineup, I do not know what, and I look at what they fundamentally do on the map and how they play. I do not know what he does better than like what Jensen would have done. Like you realise these guys had Jensen on their team. I'm sure they've literally got a stats department and stuff like that. Like Jensen, the things that Jensen was doing on these teams was obscene. That Team Liquid, the team with Jensen on it, was playing consistently in mid lane without a jungler. You had the Broxite era, you had Torin, who's still trying to learn where mid lane and top lane are, and you had Xmissy before, who basically knew how his bread was buttered and loved double lift, right? Jensen played through all of those eras, hardly any like systematic ward setups, and this guy was one of the best laning. He's so unbelievably consistent. He can play Zillion as well, by the way. You're going to just like retcon history. He can, 100% can. Like, that is a fact. So I just don't know what Bjergsen does better. This guy is mediocre in team fights, mediocre in lane. If it's like a comms thing and you're thinking this guy's like a shot caller and stuff, it's like, I'm not sure like how important that is in this team when you've got, like, as Yusuke said, like all these experienced players and stuff. Like when I see the Jensen version of this team, I think it's just plug, play, go, win LCS, NSI. When I see the Bjergsen version of this team, mental in my head, I'm like, this is plug, play, go, maybe win LCS, MSI. Sad days in Hawaii, by the way. Like what is going to happen unless there's crazy level up changes? What's going to happen to this man at international tournaments will be murder. Absolute murder.
Yep. I think that Team Liquid with Jensen had such a high potential. Like they could have been real world beaters on the level of like a 2019 G2. Whereas with Bjergsen, I don't see that ever happening. And I've I've played against Bjergsen several times recently. I've watched his streams, and watching his first-person views alone should just tell you that he's just not a super high-class world beater player. He's not garbage, but he's not somebody deserving of the GOAT status NNA, making you think that he's going to be the best player. Is not even close to that. And when I've played against him, there's just no pressure that I'm given. There's no feeling of, is this guy really supposed to be the guy with 8, 9 LCS titles that's supposed to be the best player? Like, if Bjergsen is the best that NA has to offer, then we have no hope.
Yeah, I certainly have my own concerns on that. Like, if people don't know, by the way, my takes have fucking aged so beautifully. I told you, I even made a video, it's on my channel right now, go click it. I told you before he'd coached one game, he wouldn't be the best coach. Everyone else just did that thing of like, but he was a really good player and I know he works really hard and he is smart about the game. And somehow they think like, by the way, I had 1 million of those points. They're all just narrative points, you fucks. None of those mean you're ever going to be a good coach. Like we said about the Max Waldo thing earlier. Right, first of all, by the way, spoiler, Max Waldo knows way more about the general game of League of Legends than Bjergsen does. Bjergsen just played fucking mid lane. And then second, and also just did NA for fuck's sake, which as we just said earlier, is like the training wheels version. And then secondly, the difference is, Max Waldo just didn't have extra coaching skills like the presence, and he hadn't done the job long enough, right? Bjergsen hadn't done it either. There was no reason to actually think he'd be some godlike coach. Then on top of that, this is why when I heard he's coming back to play, I remember thinking this is a terrible idea. It's like, why did he quit in the first place? Because as far as you can tell by the way he quit and the fact he stayed with TSM and he just stayed as a coach, and it seemed to me like he kept his option open that he could always come back to TSM. Spoiler, you think it's a coincidence he chose to have Power of Evil, not Jensen replace him? That's awfully convenient when you might want to come back a year later. Spoiler, it'll be hard to do that if the guy who replaces you then like does something internationally. Probably won't happen. So in my opinion, I thought like he only did like a half retirement anyway, but I would always say this question that I always ask people in Counter-Strike, my whole native game, when they say they're going to retire. I tell them, remember the reasons right now why you're retiring, because when you try your comeback in a year and a half, these reasons are why it is a waste of time and you won't make it. Because if, for example, you've lost the love of the game, you're not as good at the game anymore, you don't like practice, like, time off will make those reasons not seem as big. You'll start thinking, I actually want to play again. You might do what Bjergsen claimed. You know, everyone says he was saying shit like, well, I'm just watching my own mid lane and play solo queue and I'm better than him. Like these are idiotic reasons to play the game, by the way. Like, these are just things that you think of, passing thoughts while you're retired, and you can't have the ultimate agency, because, spoiler, every player who can play now would always rather play on the 10th best LCS team than coach the best LCS team. That's just the nature of the thrill of being a player and how addictive competition is, and the idea of, you know, accomplishing your dreams. It's just the way things are. So in my opinion, I actually think the fact that he really, same with Doublelift, the fact that you were like very seriously you wanted to retire, you were right then. You were right the first time. You should have retired. Because years later, you'll come up with other reasons why, but that can be a deception in itself. Like, oh, I could give it another go. In this case, I think he just came back because he looked like he had an amazing team, blah, blah, blah. Because I have to say, this is the most underwhelming Bjergsen I've ever seen. Like, I was never a super hater. Like, I thought even at the end, he was still a competent player. It's just I knew internationally he'd get exposed. I agree with you. When I've watched the Team Liquid Bjergsen, this year's Bjergsen, if I took the nameplate off, dude, I wouldn't even know this was like a Team Liquid mid laner. This could just, in fact, I might even believe this was like an NA player they're testing out and I'd be like, he seems a bit nervous on stage, you know, playing a bit conservatively sometimes. Oh, that pick. Do they not even consider him a star? Like, dude, I would never guess this was Bjergsen. And I even think, actually, and this is blasphemy to say, but who gives a fuck? It's my shit. I will say this as well. I think if you even look at the history of Bjergsen in TSM, there's a little bit of fuckery there, which is a lot of his best champions and the ones that in the draft you'd try and get him were almost to band-aid the other problems they had elsewhere on the map. Like, if you think about it classically, even though in your brain Bjergsen plays like Zed and Fizz, no, it doesn't. Those aren't the champions you would ever draft for Bjergsen. You would never give Bjergsen like the super carry assassin mid and just sit back, boys. Watch out for the... He ain't the guy like Perks who's doing like the game 5 LeBlanc. He like, right, sit back. He's going to carry this game. The joke is, beyond Syndra, which, spoiler, was just his signature champion from day one, he wasn't really the guy you went to was like, this, watch out for this. He's really going to dominate this. Like, he'd do the odd game of that internationally, but I could never rely on him in the same way. So I always thought there was a little bit of a mirage about who Bjergsen was anyway. But I just find this one really underwhelming because now this is like the sort of scenario where, as you said, there's a world where he'll still win LCS. And spoiler, when he wins LCS, the whole broadcast and fans will gaslight you that it's just same old. It's like Tom Brady. It's still the best. Wow, winning more. Wow, really is goated, isn't he? They'll even, by the way, get ready for this because this is going to tilt you off the face of the planet. If they win LCS, they'll say he definitely was better than Jensen would have been. Even though there's no rationale to do that, they will just say it. Spoiler, by the way, could Jensen have a fucking lineup like this? I'd like to see him play with his team. Did I miss something? He played without a jungle role last year, and as Kieran said, he had fucking Broxton before that. Like, can Jensen ever get a break? Apparently not. But anyway, read it back in. Is there any more on the Bjergsen angle? Do you want to talk about the rest of Team Liquid? Where do you want to go?
The fact that they put that goat tweet out tilted me.
Oh, that's mad, wasn't it?
TL, by the way, you should have a monument out to double lift in the middle of your gaming centre, because that guy dragged your nothing org and you became perennial winners off of the tail end of his legacy and his play. There is no way Jensen was coming to play at TL if double lift wasn't there and had turned that into a winning organisation, because nobody looked at your organisation and thought you were a winner. And the fact you're buying into the full, like, oh, Bjergsen's the goal, that he is NA, man. It's like, you literally had Superman, the Man of Steel, double lift in your team, the hope of NA, and you are if I was him, I'd be looking at that and I'd be like, I'm thrown so under the bus. It's so mad disrespectful. But I've got my hatred out there. I'm happy with that.
Because, by the way, even though some fan now is going to do the annoying reply guy NPC thing of like, but Thorin, he is their current player though, and Jensen and Doublelift aren't in the team anymore, so why wouldn't you just hype him? Because think about any sport in the world. Do you think if fucking LeBron joins the Chicago Bulls tomorrow, the first tweet's like, the GOAT has joined the Bulls? Like, they wouldn't even consider that tweet. What are you talking about? Because think about what that does to the history of the Chicago Bulls. Like, the joke is, like Kieran said, you've sort of like pissed in the face of the people who actually made your org legendary. Do you know who Team Liquid was before Doublelift joined? A team that famously, their best finish ever was finishing third once and not going to Worlds. That was it. They were famously like the also-rans of the big orgs. They never had any, they never even made a final. Then this guy joins and they peel off 4 of these motherfuckers in a row. You know how hard it was to win 1 title back then? Spoiler, Cloud9 isn't even at 4 titles yet, are they? Let me think.
Exactly.
No, they've just reached 4 now. They've just reached 4 now, and it took them like fucking 10 years, well, more like 8 years. But no, that's how hard it is to win. So yeah, the idea you take this guy, could pick whichever you want. Doublelift's the obvious one for that, or even just in terms of role for role, Jensen. It's like, give me a break, mate. Like, that's just so cynical. That I know it'll just be some social media idiot manager. It's not like Steve Arnesen sent that tweet out, do this tweet immediately. It's not that harsh, but even so, that whole vibe definitely fucking annoyed me, mate. It's like, he's only been there 5 games. You fucking whatever. We'll let that one go for now. Let's talk about the rest of the team though, because here's the real sad part about Team Liquid now. Despite the fact I imagine we're going to now talk about them as the best team and the team that should win LCS, I also don't really expect them to do big things internationally, and the reason why is so sad. If this really was Bjergsen from like 3 or 4 years ago as a mid laner, this lineup is fire. If it's the current Bjergsen, this lineup gets a bit depressing, actually. Like, if I have Bwipo, but he's not even supposed to be my main carry, and he can just do Bwipo things, fuck, I love that. He's like, to me, I've always said he's like the wild card. He's like JW from Counter-Strike. He's just going to cause havoc. He's going to always be unpredictable. You're going to always have to pay some attention to him. He's always going to be dragging some of your mental energy to his lane. That's great. If he's essentially the best laner, well, now what the fuck am I doing? What am I playing with now? And then similarly, like the Core JJ angle. So Core JJ is supposed to be this genius roamer. He's going to take over the whole map. He's playing with Bjergsen, mate, who, as far as I can tell, never ever actually had really good synergy with his jungler and support simultaneously ever in his whole career. Like, ever. Can anyone ever think of a fucking lineup where that ever worked? Every Bjergsen team was everyone going, the jungler is shit. And then the support half the time was like, do they even connect on the map? Like, I think, unfortunately, on paper, I get why it's a fire roster. I'm a little bit more sceptical of the actual team I've seen in the server, though.
I think, like, the same way that C9 stole, like, away Berserker, TL's blessing is the fact that they got Hans Sama. Like, Hans Sama is, like, as an actual ADC carry mentality player, play for lane, play to win the game, responsibility resources, he was the man in EU, and they've gotten him, and he looks like he's in pretty, like, good, decent form. We'll see if he can pass the NA, like, skill vampire test, and if, like, he just, like, starts, like, sludging downhill. Like, newsflash, Sven came over in super sick form. He was never the same again, by the way. This is why people like Doublelift are absolute phenoms, because they somehow managed to keep their skills up at a level that everyone thinks is low, but they don't realise you don't have the practice partners,
yes.
You don't have the people who can manage you fundamentally. You have to skill check yourself, and it's
yes.
really, 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 really hard. Another little problem is I don't know, this team is like an all-star team, but if I want Hans Sama to be like my go-to guy and my main damage dealer, I think it's good that Bjergsen's like a low-resource player right now. He's not taking a lot of CS off the map, but CoreJJ doesn't play for lane, and Hans Sama loves to play for lane, and we've seen this exact problem with Trimby. If Hans Sama doesn't have a support that can keep up with him in lane, it really gimmicks your game. It really bottlenecks your ability to play the game. The amateur guy that they brought in, I actually think looked better in terms of the laning. Yeah, that guy. I think he looked better in terms of like unleashing Hans Sama's like laning capabilities than CoreJJ did. And you've seen it with Doublelift, you've seen it with Tactical. Sometimes CoreJJ's roam timers are a bit dodgy, where he just leaves his ADC and they get dove and they die. And I know that he comes from a Korean system where it's really important to play around jungle economics and that, but with Santorin being your jungler, I'm not sure that's that important here. I really think they should really focus on enabling Whipple and Hans Sama, and playing top to bot historically, or top to bot and bot to top, is one of the hardest ways to play League of Legends. Like, the teams that have done it ever, Smeb, look at his bot lane, Praying Gorilla, are you having a joke? Xiaohu, Gala, and Ming, are you having a joke? Look at these teams. These are some of the best macro-based teams in the world. Are you that TL? Do you think you're that team? Because you have to be honest with yourself. I don't see it. We'll see how far they can take it, but I'm not sure how sold I am on this system.
By the way, I've also just realised you are effectively planning to send in the same team Santorin and Bjergsen to Worlds.
Yes,
again.
Yeah.
That's roll the blade clip. Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill. Yeah, exactly. That's you, Steve Arnett. You're going to put those two players together. One, they already went to Worlds. Go look that one up. And then two, did you see him when they were on their own? Fucking hell. Look, if they can break the bus this time, fair play, but history hasn't been kind. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I don't think their mid-jungle engine is something that you're going to play well into against any decent mid-jungle. And you have a CoreJJ who wants to roam everywhere. So, where is the logic behind the team? It's the best players that you could get, aside from Jensen Bjergsen. You have all of these good players, but it doesn't necessarily fit together. The pieces don't make sense. It's just two contrasting different play styles. Whereas if you did have a better carry in either the mid or the jungle, maybe you had a Blabber. I think that Cloud9 and Team Liquid, if they swap junglers, both teams might actually just be better. Because you can have CoreJJ playing through Blabber, and that would be really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, the joke is, I think that was even a Monty take he had in the off-season, was why doesn't Cloud9 Team Liquid just swap junglers? They'd be better. But the problem with that is, just in the way that GMs think in their brain, they'd be like, swap Blabber for Santorin? No way, bro. It's did you listen to what we were saying? It make the team better. It's all about the individual fucking value, is it, you idiot? But whatever. Well, that's by the by, isn't it? We can't fix the whole mentality of NA with one podcast. And let's try to with 100 podcasts. Right, what about this? Another thing I wanted to get your take on is this. The move that no one ever talks about, this just shows you how personalities, what coaching's all about, is everyone talks like Team Liquid doesn't even have a coach. I mean, the joke is last year they didn't, but they've now got Giotto, who obviously was with Immortals, and then if you go back, he was with Origin, and then if you go back before that, he was with fucking Splice, I think it was. Before that, he was with Schalke, so he's been with a whole bunch of different teams, but you notice there's a very differing level of talent there. And aside from having a few really good players in Origin, because they want to play with each other, this is really his first chance at a true super, the best players potentially, because for me there's a big difference in coaching. There's coaches who are amazing with very little talent, or there's coaches who find their own talent or develop their talent, but there's also a different style of coach, and it's the coach that just coaches the best players, and their whole skill set is they're all about presence and get the buy-in from the player and know how to use the player and set your stars up to succeed, etc. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts obviously I can only go off things I've heard from players or having them on my talk shows. I think Kyoto's a pretty good coach. He seems to have his own like vision of the game and stuff. I want to know, what do people think of that angle? Like, does that affect how you think Team Liquid will do, all this set of players?
It's like I don't know who's responsible for it. I'm going to attribute it to Gillo, and I'm not sure if it is. I don't know how much player input there is. I think their drafting's been like pretty good. They caught on to like a lot of the draft tactics with the early prio on Thresh, because it's the Thresh that enables the ADC. They have like they've obviously like been developing some stuff. It was nice to see like the Vigar. The player I think that's benefited the most in the change in dynamics is Santorin. Santorin looks to me, remember when Broxah basically had like a pathway of playing jungle when his mid laner was Nemesis? He would do like every single game, they would have a set plan for Broxah and he would like just follow it out. Santorin basically does this like early game execute every single game where he like pass bot and he hits bot lane at like a 30-second plus or minus different timer, and it has gotten first blood in every game apart from one, I think, which is pretty impressive. Like every single game they've played, they've managed to execute on it, and hopefully these teams are, they're looking at like the VODs and they're seeing that this is like something, but he has managed to like confuse or misdirect or make people think they're not coming, and he's managed to execute. And as much as I'm a Santorin hater, like this guy's had like a lot more better like presence on the map. This guy's maybe it's because Bwippo has taken some of the primary engage. Some of this guy's like in secondary engaging and stuff is getting a lot better. So maybe it's to do with the coaching and stuff. But I've actually seen quite a big level up for Santorin. His team fighting's still a bit weird. His target priority is still a bit weird. But these are things that actually can get better quite easily with the meta as the meta goes up. His jungle fundamentals I thought were like irreplaceable, but they seem a lot better now, which is hopeful.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these, like, he'll path red and then go all of the way to bot lane, just hoping that it works. And it does work. And I'm not really sure if it's kind of a band-aid to force the Team Liquid bot lane to get ahead, and then to play through that. I'm not sure how much of a negative it's going to be to Team Liquid when teams finally start realizing that they're always going to try to gank bot early. Like, I think that might have a pretty big deficit into how this Team Liquid squad is wanting to play right now. And I'm not sure that they're going to recuperate easily from it. But I don't know too much about Gyoto. I've heard that he's a decent coach. So they probably have a whole different ways of playing it. And it's not the end of the world if you're a Trundle and you're 2 camps down. That doesn't really affect the game that much. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to be something that will harm Team Liquid and if it might just be a band-aid. Because Bjergsen teams always happen to have a lot of band-aids.
I'll also say as well, like, the sad thing is, I am sort of, like, I'm a bit like you, Kira. I'm just out on Santorin, mate. Like, I feel like waiting for him to go to Worlds again is like fucking Charlie Brown going, I can't wait to kick that football. She's surely going to let me kick it this time. It's like, no, fucking learn your lesson, mate. Because the problem with Santorin is this. He's one of those players, dude, where I think if I could control his brain, he'd be so good. Because I get the vibe. If you notice, it even happens in LCS. He always looks so good right until that game he doesn't in the playoffs. It'll always be in the playoffs. There's always one game where this guy just breaks, and sometimes that's the end of the playoffs. Sometimes, he picks up the next game, but then he busts the game. Like, the problem with that guy I've noticed is he just feels like the guy where I'm not one of those people you'll notice who, I think, for example, like, I don't think Power of Evil and Froggen are pussies. I don't think they're just scared to play Assassins and like be aggro. I think their style of play and their philosophy on the game is a conservative, farm-based style around mages, right? I genuinely think Santorin sometimes does just like sort of play a bit pussy. I think sometimes the moment just gets to him, especially internationally. Because the thing is this, it's not that he does the blabber and does like an outrageous int that loses you the game. He just becomes invisible. I just forget he's in the game, and I'm like, it's only like towards, like, there'll be like a moment where I'll be like, what the fuck's he doing actually? Where is this guy? And then I'm like, oh fuck, he's done it again. He's wrecked us again. And the problem is I have to watch for that, because at the moment it's all looking great, like you're saying, but I'm just waiting for when that happens, because that's the one area I don't know what's going to take, but there's some mental level up Santorin has to make if he's going to be like an international jungler. I've seen him at too many worlds now.
Yeah, it's just too common.
Yeah.
It just like happens way too much. I'll say one thing. The one thing I'm looking for, to definitely coach out of this team, because it's really, really bad, is two things. This team's like dragon setups are like, of any of the teams I've seen, they are the worst. TL are the ultimate offenders of staring at drakes being taken and like not doing anything and setting up players. They literally lost their only game to 100 Thieves because 4 people sat and stared at a drake being taken like it was a movie, and then the team engaged on them and killed them all. And Hansama was on the opposite side of the map. So like, how do you plan on taking that? Do you plan on taking that drake if Hansama with 4 items is on the opposite side farming a blue buff? Like, what is going on here, guys? Like, the level of disconnect there, that's really, really crazy. And if you're talking about pros that are like, you know, very experienced, that's worrying. Second of all, you go from Drake, now let's go up to Baron. They are the ultimate Herald and Baron like bait team. They get like so like sucked in to this objective and they play it like so uncleanly and messy. It was very, very strange. The order in which they like do the procedures really, to me, this is something like coaches like have to like drill into players, where you like push out the lanes, then you set up the vision, you scan, you then go to the Baron, start the Baron dance, like come back and forward. TL doesn't have a Baron dance. TL's just like, it's nothing. It's literally just a bunch of players staring at Whipple going, you're the playmaker, do something. And that doesn't work. What happens if Whipple's tilted in a game? What happens if Whipple's behind in a game? What if Whipple's not an engaged champion? He's now on a carry champion like Fiora or something. Like, these could be some things that are a little bit dicey for me, especially when, you know, and when I see an NA team, I like to see consistent like things quite early, for then they can build upon those fundamentals. I see some quite big gaps in their team already that they're not disappearing. I know it's quite early, but they're like reoccurring themes that are a bit worrying, because I've seen a lot of NA teams go, and it's the same things I'm seeing all the time.
Yeah, and I see Team Liquid as one of these teams to where everybody has had success in the past playing all of these different disparate styles. Like Hansama, even when Rogue wasn't winning the championships, he was still looking like one of the best players on the team. So everybody has all of these strategies, and I don't know how easy this team is going to be to coach. Like, because you have everybody kind of wanting to go back to potentially wanting to go back to what was successful for them before, and the styles don't match. So that could be a scary thing with, can this team even be coached through these simple macro plays? Because even if they, like, doing a Baron, doing a Dragon, these are very easy things to coach. But these players might not be as malleable because of how seasoned they are.
I also will say as well, to me, Core JJ is a little bit like Hylissang. Like, you don't coach what he does in the game. Like, he has the green light to do whatever he wants, because those are two players for me that are unique for their role, the support role in the West, where it's like, if they make a crazy move that to you doesn't make sense, they might be right and you might be wrong. Like, they've just got the track record that says that to me. I also think as well, if you look at the kinds of moves they try to make, where they just roam seemingly randomly, like, the reason you can't coach a player like that is you actually wouldn't be able to pause the game and take him out and say, what are you doing right now? Like, I don't think consciously they could explain. Like, it's a bit like, essentially what they do with their roams is like when people like Prime Caps do an outplay or Knight or something. They can't consciously be thinking of this, boys. Essentially, they just sort of like, their mind goes and they just let themselves do genius things. And sort of the problem with players like that is, one, they've got to be their absolute best, because you've got to trust them that they're going to do this shit. And then two, you are flying blind a little bit. You've got to coach the rest of the players to know how to follow these things up, but you can't really, like, those aren't set players when they do that. I know fans think they are, but like, they aren't. That is just genius taking over at that point in time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
listen, definitely tricky to coach, but at the same time, could also be like an incredible joker to have up your sleeve if it works out, as you've seen with those aforementioned players when their teams were at their best. It's the reason why those are some of the best. Notice those two players are in essentially the best Western teams to ever play, minus G2. They're in the Fnatic and they're in the Team Liquid, so pretty good track record. Right, what about this? Yeah, go on.
Yep, especially when you're not going to be as individually skilled as a Korean or Chinese team. It's really just never been a Western team that's like that you need some kind of strategical wild card that's going to be the thing that wins you the game.
I even think, by the way, that's actually a rare edge that these two teams can have. Not literally these lineups, but if they go head to head with the Koreans, right? When you think of the great, like, support players in the world. Like, look, there are definitely players I would say are better than those players, but actually the kind of like playmaking we're talking about, they actually match up very well against those Koreans in that sense. Like, is Kerry overall a better support player than Hillsang? Yeah, probably. But the difference is Kerry are going to do some of the shit that Hillsang might in a game, or even Core JJ for that matter. So I think, yeah, it is actually a rare edge that you have if you're a Westerner for my money. So I certainly hope these teams can make use of it. Should we talk about 100 Thieves then? Or was there any other TL angle we didn't hit?
Yeah, there's one thing I would like to say, like as a little note of an analysis that's very unique about TL this year as a top team. I don't know why it is, they don't grow their gold leads. I don't know how they're doing it. I haven't broken this like down. Maybe it's because like double lift teams like won the league for like so long, but it's kind of like a weird thing. TL has a gold lead, and then it just kind of stays the same amount. Like not literally, guys. Like I know it does, but it doesn't expand like 2 to 3 to 5 to 8 to 15, like, you know what I mean, to 10, and they like, win the game and that. They kind of just like, they get 3,000 gold, or they come out of the laning stage with 2,000 gold, and then they have 2,000 gold in the next dragon, then they have 2,000 gold at the next dragon, and they have 2,000 gold in the next dragon. I don't know if they're like missing side lane farm, or they're just like trading farm equally with the team, but that is a very, 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 very dangerous thing to do against players and teams. If you're coming out of lanes with leads, to do against like elite LCK and LPL teams, because I'll tell you one thing for free, NA teams I doubt will across the board out of 10 times will be out team fighting these teams, even from like 3-4k like gold leads. Your like team fighting fundamentals just aren't as good sometimes. This team, I think, unless they find a new system of play, are going to have to learn to like grow their gold leads. Either like you grow it through bot, or you grow it through top, or you take jungle camps and you eat another person's quadrant. They're going to have to find a way to start accelerating their gold leads and speeding their games up, because they play tragically slow, and it's very, very, very like worrying if this is a team that's going to be like presented as like the NA like hope.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.